oftentimes officials want to watch film and they want to learn about mechanics and signaling and, the laws of the game. I think that this topic is so rare still that it's going to be very exciting. Oh, this is something new. This is something different. How can I listen to this and maybe pick something up that's going to help me stay away from injuries or get in better shape for this upcoming season? So I think it's just a new topic or a hot topic that will provide something a little bit different and exciting. The off-season time period is built to where we want to gradually ramp you up for the volume of work that you'll need to do within not a single game, but over the course of a full year, and stay away from some of those injuries. We also want to ramp you up for the speed of movement, because if you go 6 to 8 months without doing much, just camps and clinics here and there, or playing with the kids, and you go to run full speed, that's where we see a lot of the injuries start to happen. So the offseason is all about ramping you up and bulletproofing your body from some of the things that may occur during the season, and also for a lot of officials that want to look better in their uniform on game day, because it may not be fair and it may not be right, but it is an important part, and supervisors and assigners talk about it a lot. I think that I didn't realize how grateful and thankful officials are. I mean, the whole community of officiating has a ton of nice, very considerate people and personalities. People are really willing to help you with anything almost, but I think I didn't realize the extent of it.
And now, Season 2, Episode 7, Letter F, Fitness. Join host Dana Pappas with special guest, Runnin Ref, Austin Ardrey on the From A to Zebra podcast.
Welcome back to the From A to Zebra podcast. I'm Dana Pappas. Nate Acosta is working his real job today, so I'll be visiting with our guests on my own. We have talked so much about the behind-the-scenes aspect of officiating that it's time that we shift gears and start talking about the physical part of it. On this episode of the podcast, we are talking about the letter F and diving into the topic of fitness. This is certainly an important topic, as it is necessary for all officials to stay game ready throughout the year, and not just when their season's starting. Our guest on this episode is Austin Ardrey, founder and CEO of Runnin Ref, and a man who has over a decade of experience as a strength and conditioning coach and as an expert in fitness and sports. Austin, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, my pleasure. And before we get started, I do want to say that as a former director of officials, I love this topic because I can't tell you the number of times where somebody would start their season and get injured about a year in, and I'd find out that they didn't start preparing until about a week before the season. So I love what you're doing, and I think this is going to be a really informative episode for our listeners. I'm excited to hear what you have to share, so we appreciate you taking the time. So before we really get into the topic of the day and kind of what you're doing with Runnin Ref, can you tell our listeners about yourself and your career in the strength, conditioning, and fitness industry?
Yeah. So I was a college strength and conditioning coach for 9 years. So fitness, strength and conditioning, injury prevention has always been a part of my life. I was an athlete as well growing up, as most officials were. College football had just kind of run its course for me, and I wanted some different things out of life. So I decided to move to Dallas, Texas, and fitness was still a passion of mine, but I wanted to spend more time with my family and do, different things that I never got to do within college athletics. So lo and behold, I met two college football officials who needed some help. And what they wanted at the time was help with running mechanics, getting in shape for football season, specifically for the movements that they do on the field. And then also they had some nagging injuries that they couldn't quite get over. So, to your point, the crash course theory that a lot of officials have done forever has just kind of gone out the window in today's world. So we just decided to meet up in North Texas, just the three of us. We went through a training session that would look like what would happen in a collegiate conditioning session, and we hit it off from there. And then we never thought that this would come and be what it is today, but we had such a great time together. I got to know them. I got to know the ins and outs of officiating from what they actually do on the field, and we just kind of took off and ran with it over time.
It's great, and you're kind of leading in that direction anyway of the next question. So obviously, with your background, you kind of talked about that initial meeting with some folks that got you to this place, but what is Runnin Ref, and what does it do? Tell us about the platform.
So it is a total strength and conditioning platform for officials. So we don't train basketball players, we don't train football players, we only train officials. And it's an online platform because I met these two guys in North Texas and started training, but there was starting to be officials that would reach out from their crews in different places that are like, oh, wow, what are you doing? So we wanted to help. And initially, we didn't think to put it on an app-based platform, which is what it is today. So you have a calendar that pops up over the course of the week, and it has all of your workouts, your warm-ups, your injury prevention exercises, all packed into your personal dashboard. But at the time, we were just sharing Word documents and Excel sheets and text messages. And at the time, but that's all we thought it was going to be. I was just helping them and creating a relationship. So Running Ref is a online program that you can do from anywhere in the world, and we give tons and tons of options for you to be successful in training and not having to go the crash course route or guess on what to do to get yourself ready to perform.
I love that, kinda hearing the evolution of it. So it started off as just, here's a PDF of some stuff that you can do, and
On
now
a
it's something
napkin.
that yeah, so now it's something that people can actually do on their phone or their iPad, I'm imagining, where it's kind of you can take it with you, it's portable in that way, so I think that that's really cool to hear that you're trying to help out a couple of people, and then it's grown into an actual app that's custom for officials, which is really cool. I love that. Kinda hearing about that story. Like, how long was that process? How soon did it evolve from that initial PDFs and spreadsheets and text messages?
Wow. So the timeline, I got a phone call, and it was actually from my college strength coach at the time. He was the head strength and conditioning coach at University of North Texas, and for obvious reasons, he couldn't help the officials with their own training. So he called me. He knew that I had just moved to Dallas, and he's like, "Hey, would you be interested in just helping these guys?" And we didn't even talk about me getting paid. We didn't talk about meeting again. We didn't talk about any of that. So it literally was just something on a napkin at the time. Um, that was January of 2023. We met for the first time, and they enjoyed it so much that we came back in February to the same complex, and they brought another official with them. And then over the course of that year leading up to August, we met one time a month, and I think we met twice in June and twice in July because we were like, hey, we want to ramp this up. And we started trying to expose them to the heat because, as you know, in North Texas and Oklahoma and many other places, the heat's a big impact. And it's not just for the players, the officials are in it too. So heat exposure, hydration were some of the things that I was starting to push onto them too. Like, hey, you guys have trained really well, but you might have some offsetting, consequences if you don't prepare for these things too. So we got out into the sun and actually prepared for the heat they were going to have. So it had a completely different element. I just stayed in touch with them over the course of the in season. Just, hey, how your game's going? How's your body feeling? Is there some different things you need for recovery, or what are you doing? And then they started asking about strength training. So that's where that piece finally came in. Initially, it was just conditioning and movement mechanics and how do I actually move better on the field and get in position to make the calls that I need to make. And we didn't even think about forming an LLC until a year and a half in. And then that even took some legwork. And now we are 3.5 years almost later from that date. And we're just trying to find more and more officials that, aspire to get to the next level. So quite a process, to be honest with you.
It's amazing, and I just love the fact that it was really based on, here's what we have, and then they were able to ask you questions, and then you were able to kinda cater it toward what an official would need, which is really super specific. It's such a niche within the sports industry, like, nobody's really thinking about the officials, and like you said, people are talking about heat prevention and all, heat illness prevention, all of that for players and coaches. But the officials are on their own. So I love the fact that that was included because they're outside too. If the teams are outside, so are the officials. So I think that's great.
Yeah, but the officials are the only ones too that don't get a break. I think the
Right.
officials know that, but it's not talked about. I mean, the players get subbed out on third down, or they get subbed out at the 2 minutes left in the second quarter. The officials are still out there. They don't get to sit until halftime or post game catch up.
I think about, hockey where everybody's shifts. Hockey officials, they're out there the whole time and they're skating and the players are on for their shift and then they come off and it just,
Or 60 seconds or whatever it ends up being, right?
yeah,
I mean, I go to a Dallas Stars
crazy.
game and there's red at the top of the screen when you look up, and it's like, okay, well, he's getting off the ice now. Nope, the official's still skating full speed.
He doesn't get a sub, he's still going,
No.
so yeah, I just that's really cool to hear the evolution of that, and I think, you and I have obviously talked a number of times. I don't think I ever asked you kind of how that happened and how it went from PDFs and spreadsheets to an actual app, so that's really cool. So, and some of this is gonna be a little overlapping with some of the other questions, but just to get the full scope. So as we talk about fitness as officials, can you tell us the importance of training in the off season and during the season? And then what are some of the biggest differences in those fitness regimens, if there are differences?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, a lot of officials will think, hey, I just need to get started in the off season, and then they kind of drop off in season, which we understand because you have full-time jobs, you have families, but you need your body to operate and perform at the highest level. So the off-season time period, we think of training as we think of training as an entire year-round process, right? It just depends on what you do at what time of year and how much that you do, okay? The off-season time period is built to where we want to gradually ramp you up for the volume of work that you'll need to do within not a single game, but over the course of a full year, and stay away from some of those injuries. We also want to ramp you up for the speed of movement, because if you go 6 to 8 months without doing much, just camps and clinics here and there, or playing with the kids, and you go to run full speed, that's where we see a lot of the injuries start to happen. So the off-season is all about ramping you up and bulletproofing your body from some of the things that may occur during the season, and also for a lot of officials that want to look better in their uniform on game day, because it may not be fair and it may not be right, but it is an important part, and
It
supervisors
is.
and assigners talk about it a lot. The in-season time period shifts a lot. Now, a lot of officials that we work with do have high school and college games, so that makes it more challenging. But most officials do want to elevate themselves and get to the next level. So they are striving to do that. So they are taking their fitness very seriously to make sure that their body is operating so that they can do that. The in season is about keeping the volume low enough, but making sure that we keep conditioning levels high so that they keep themselves in great shape. And then also we want them to stay strong and not just lose everything they've worked on so hard through the off season. And again, that's where injuries can creep up on you. So if we stop training when it comes to the in season time, injury risk spikes dramatically. So it's really important for officials to understand the differences. But the biggest thing is the volume of training is much lower. So we try to front load the beginning part of the week to give you the bulk of it. And then the back end of the week, when, in at least in terms of college football, there's less of a requirement during the beginning. Now, again, if you do multiple sports, if you do high school also, basketball is multiple times per week. That's where having a low volume and just continually training kind of helps out, and it saves us a lot. So we try to keep the sessions to a minimum, 30 to 40 minutes in season, and they can, be 45 minutes probably on average in the off season.
Very good. And you said something that's so important about looking good in your uniform, because there's so much to be said about that first impression and how an official looks in their uniform, how they look when they move. There's kind of more and more, I think more now than ever before, there's an expectation that officials are also athletes. And that is because you have to be able to keep up with the pace of the game. And I think that that credibility of an official a lot of times is hinging on how they look and their comportment and all of those things. So I'm glad you said that, because it's an important point in this entire fitness conversation. And I think that looking the part, it helps you the minute you walk on the floor, field, pitch, whatever the case may be. If you look like you can keep up, if you look like you could get in position, if you look like you're there and you're a participant in the game, I think that that was a great point. I'm so glad that you said that, because we don't talk about that enough.
No, because lo and behold, the way that you look shouldn't have to impact the calls that you make and whether you can get in position. But if it's going to be important to the people watching the game that are judging you, it's going to be important to the assigners. We want you to look athletic. We want you to look like you can get in position. Lo and behold, everybody does want to look better too. Everybody does want to look healthy and be healthy. So I think it absolutely means something, and hopefully officials take that seriously, because it's becoming more and more prominent as we see, just in talks with supervisors and assigners.
For sure. And I think that we talk so much about the uncontrollables in officiating, and there's a lot of things you can't control. You can't control when a supervisor sees you, or an evaluator, or timing. There's a lot of things that you really can't control, but you can control your physical fitness, your ability to get up and down the field. And I understand there's going to be illnesses and that sort of thing that are a little bit outside of your control, but you can sure do things to help your case a little bit as far as your fitness goes, and how your uniform looks, and is it tailored, or do you just buy whatever's off the shelf and let it hang on you? So I think that and it's terrible, because you always say don't judge a book by its cover, but there is a little bit of that in officiating when you walk in, or your shoes shine. These little things that seem so insignificant really do, like, this official cares about him or herself. Look at how he or she looks. And I think it's just part of it, right? Like you said, right, wrong, or indifferent. It is part of it for sure.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a pride to it. I mean,
For sure.
presentation means everything. I mean, look, when you go to a restaurant, right? Presentation sells, presentation means a lot. So yeah, I totally agree.
Absolutely. So, we often, obviously, a lot talk about officials' retention. We talk about recruitment, but we know now that retention is just as important. So, one of the reasons that we do lose officials is because of injuries, either taking them out for a season or sometimes for a career. So, how important is it for an appropriate training regimen specific to just injury prevention?
I think extremely important. I mean, your body's your machine. You can't officiate without a healthy body. You're going to miss assignments, so that means you're going to miss a payday. If you're an official that's aspiring to get to the next level, that keeps you out of some postseason assignments and getting different graded opportunities to move on. Yeah, getting the injury bug could be very detrimental to someone's career, and obviously it could take a hit on their confidence as well, right? We want officials to be confident when they step out onto the court or on the field in their body and how they're moving. And I know I'm going to get to the spot because I'm fast enough to do it. I've done certain drills to help me with that, or my body is in the best shape it's ever been in. I'm going to go out there and just use my instincts and my knowledge as an official and go and make the right calls to do so. So I think the injury prevention part is extremely important. And I think people get a little bit misguided sometimes when they think strength training and fitness, and they always assume it's got to be barbells or deadlifts or bench press, which hold value. And, we do utilize those movements. But again, we give officials options in training, which I think for anybody training themselves, you don't have to use those movements to prevent injuries, right? There's smaller muscles that are important to start developing, or single leg and single arm. And if you've had previous injuries before, you're going to have to train a little bit different than somebody who's 16, 18 years old and fully healthy and growing, and mom and dad are keeping food on the table. So I think the injury prevention talk is really important. And I think that officials need to continue developing the correct mindset around just their body is a chain, their body's a system, and it's got to be ready to operate all year round.
And there are so many people that have been basketball officials in particular. Their knees are just shot because they've been running up and down. Those hardwood floors are just unforgiving. So I think that as they're trying to continue on their path, if they want to stick with it, if they can, get through the pain with ibuprofen and icing and all of that stuff, I don't know if they ever really think about training specific to injury prevention, or if they're just kind of putting a Band-Aid on it. Like, okay, well, I was done, and then I put some, I put some Ben Gay on it and went about my business. Like that can't be the way that you make it through a season. There's got to be another mechanism. I think it's great that your program does that. So something I was thinking of as you were talking about, using weights and all of that with your app, is it something that you would have to go to a gym, or is there an ability that you could do this at home with some weights or body weight, or is it very specific to you got to be in a gym to be able to do this?
It's more or less tiered in that aspect. We do have the option, and we kind of title it as I don't have enough time to get to the gym today. So
Okay.
twice a week, it does actually give you a 30-minute at-home workout where you don't need anything except a couple of bands. Maybe everybody can grab themselves a couple bands off of Amazon, but it's almost tiered in that approach where the more you have, the more you could get out of it. But we do have plenty of officials that train at home, that don't have a treadmill at home, so they can utilize a local field, or a local tennis court, or they can get creative. And if they've got to get their fitness in somehow, some way, they can go out on the street and run. Now, those aren't the most ideal cases, and some officials do live in cold weathered climates, and that's just impossible to get out in the snow. The more you have, the better. But simple barbells, simple dumbbells, benches, bands, those type of pieces of equipment will definitely, make you able to train and get what you need out of it. So again, one of the reasons we train the way that we do is because we've given officials options for near every exercise, just for that simple reason. If you are asking us to help you become a better official and we don't give you every opportunity to be successful with what we're giving you, we're doing you a disservice and we're not helping you out.
And what a great business plan.
All about the officials.
I love it. Like, that's so cool. Instead of just being like, okay, if you don't have this, sorry, we can't help you. You're out of luck if you can't get to the gym. So I love that there's options available for anybody, regardless of how busy they are or what equipment they have or what facilities they have access to. That's fantastic, because there's officials just of every walk of life. So I think that's important that you keep that front of mind in what you're doing. So on the platform on Runnin Ref, it looks like you've developed programs for various sports. What are some of the main differences in the regimens from sport to sport? And is the platform looking to expand to other sports in the future?
That's a great segue from injury prevention. So I'll give you an example. We've looked into each sport and what the main injuries are and how to prevent them. Now, I believe that training is a total system. So I do still think that you need X, Y, and Z just to be the athlete that you need to be. But with that being said, there are common trends within each major officiating sport and the injuries that we see. So, for example, basketball, we're seeing some of those officials with a little bit more groin issues. And that's, a lot of time when they start to change positions or the ball changes directions very quickly, they've got to start and reaccelerate in the other direction. The groins are very involved. So that's a sport where we give the groins a little bit more work in our strength training. All of our officials typically, all officials in general typically will have, some patella tendonitis, some Achilles tendonitis. Those are the main two for all sports. So within each program, we definitely want to hit on those. But outside of that, just the subtle differences, most of the strength training is relatively similar, but it just looks different over the course of the year, right? Our basketball officials may do some of the same exercises, but they won't do those till a different part of the year per se. Now, the conditioning or the movement based stuff is where it differs the most. And that's where watching the game and understanding what's truly happening is a big piece. And we actually have a little bit of a cheat code with some GPS data. So we've really even
Very
dialed
nice.
in more in the last year. Yeah, we have some soccer GPS data. We have very minimal basketball GPS data, but we're trying to get more potentially this summer at some camps and clinics. We're on the verge of getting connected with some rugby league data, which is
Very nice.
very cool. We don't have any in football, but that is something that I want to try to explore with some, officials that are open-minded. But the field or court-based training is where it differs the most. Our soccer officials do cover the most distance as a whole, so we'll do some longer type of stuff and some longer sprints. Our basketball officials do a lot of, very fast-paced type of stuff. And then, per se, our football officials, they will do a good amount of work, but we don't just go over the top because we can, but we do add in other elements like backpedaling and shuffling into their program because those are movements that if they haven't been doing, they're going to be really sore when they get to their first scrimmage or first, week zero of a real season. And we don't want that. We want them to wake up the next day and feel better than they had the previous season.
That's really cool. It's you see apps for fitness stuff all the time, but this is so different and so special because you're really, honing in on those very specific, like you were talking about in football, they do very specific movements that you're not going to really shuffle or backpedal as much in day-to-day life. So I
Yeah.
just think that that's really, I've never once had to shuffle across, my office. So, I just think that it's really neat that you've done so much work and so much. I love that you're doing GPS data. I mean, there's going to be some. I can't wait to kind of see some of what comes out of that. That's really exciting stuff.
It's a little bit eye-opening. I mean,
Oh, I would imagine.
you don't
I
realize
would
how much of
imagine.
the games are actually spent walking. So you get these loose numbers on Google. A basketball official does this much in game, a soccer official does this much in game. And then you start to dig through it a little bit. And that's very true. And in some cases, even higher than, but in certain cases, there's walking too. So that even means the fast, explosive athletic stuff is even more important to at least make sure that you're adding in. You don't have to do it every day or 3 times a week. But if it's not present at all when you go to train, that's where you're missing the boat.
Yeah, and you were talking about those fast, explosive movements. I remember a state basketball tournament back home where first game of the tournament, and it was maybe 2 minutes into the game. There's a transition happening in basketball. The official goes to turn and run and hamstring. It was like immediate. And luckily we had an alternate there. Everything was fine. But I just felt so bad for him because he could work the rest of the tournament, but it was one of those things where it was just turn to go and all of us went, oh, because you just saw it immediately. So,
Yeah.
talking about those things and sometimes things are going to happen and we get that, but man, the more that you can do to take control of that and prevent it, then you get to call the whole state tournament instead of 27 seconds of it. So
Yeah, I
it
mean,
was
that's a
sad.
dream for some people, right?
It is.
I mean, some people may only get one opportunity.
You're exactly right. This is such good information. So as you've kind of gotten more involved with the officiating industry, obviously you're entrenched now. As you've been working with individual officials, what are some of the biggest surprises to you as you've gone from college athletes to officials?
I think I was just naive. I think that I didn't realize how grateful and thankful officials are. I mean, the whole community of officiating has a ton of nice, very considerate people and personalities. People are really willing to help you with anything almost. But I think I didn't realize the extent of it because, as we talked about kind of briefly before, officials aren't thought about a lot. Officials are forgotten about all the time. They get the smallest dressing rooms. There's no water in the dressing room sometimes. We did a little pregame warm up session with some college basketball officials here locally a few months back. Their locker room was so small at a college in Dallas, right? We're not talking about in the middle of nowhere. A college in DFW Metroplex, where I don't know how all three of them sat down. The officials are just forgotten about. And so anytime that we lend a helping hand, officials are very, very grateful. We get so many thank yous, and thank you for thinking of us. Thank you for what you're doing for the officiating community. And really it's again, it's about the official, but it's just surprising. I just didn't understand the level of extent that the whole community has, been forgotten about.
And that's a great point. I always say it to people about officials. They are grateful when somebody provides a good service for them. But on the other side of that, when somebody does, they're so loyal. Like officials are one of the most loyal groups of individuals I've ever met. Like if they have a certain hotel that they really like, that's the one that they're always going to stay at. A restaurant that they really like, that's the one they're always going to go to. So if you can win over the loyalty of a group of officials, you're set, you're set for life because they are super loyal and they do really appreciate people who go the extra mile for them because they do get forgotten. And I've been in some of those locker rooms where I'm like, is this actually a closet? Like
Right. There's
it's
a mop bucket
unacceptable,
right
really.
there.
Yes, it is crazy. I'm like, okay, what is happening? So I think that that's if you're not in that industry walking into it for you, I think that that's a great thing to note, like going, wow, these people really they're so grateful. Like, why are they so grateful? But that's exactly why, because they're not used to having people go that extra mile. So that was a great comment. So in looking at your website, I've looked at it often. So one of the values of Run and Ref, and we talked a little bit about this already, is that officials are athletes. Can you talk about the importance of this particular value at the core of your business? And have you found that the competitive drive that you saw in athletes you have trained is similar to the officials that you're working with?
Yeah, great question. I truly, truly believe officials are athletes. As we already talked about, you don't get a break. So you're on the court or on the field even longer. But you just watch the officials. When I was in college football, my job was to help with special teams and make sure all the players are where they were supposed to be. And then it was also to get the players out of the officials' way. And if we as strength coaches didn't do that or get the coaches out of the officials' way, there was a penalty. So that was my job, but I wasn't watching the officials. After I did my duties, obviously you start focusing on the game again. So again, the officials are forgotten about. I didn't even pay attention, and I'm shaking hands with them and talking to them before the game, in between plays, so on and so forth. But now I go to games and I watch, and I'll watch the play a little bit, but I make sure that I'm paying attention to the officials. I want to know how they move, so on and so forth. But you watch them, and they sprint, they stop, they start, they change directions. They have to be in, once again, great physical condition to do that for 90-minute soccer match, or for 4 quarters of a basketball game, or overtime in a football game where they're getting over 200 plays where they've been standing on their feet for 3 hours and had, some kind of protein bar or a banana during halftime.
Maybe.
Yeah, if they're lucky, and if, the college will give them a shot of Gatorade too.
Right.
With the competitive edge, I definitely see, and I do think that you see it a little bit more as you go up the ladder. So I think at every level, there's a little bit more of a competitive drive. That's not to take anything away from people that aren't in college or the professional aspects, because there's plenty of competitive officials in the high school realm as well, and even in the lower levels. But I think it's truly person to person and a personality. There's very motivated players and there's very motivated officials that will go above and beyond and ask to do more. And that's in all walks of life. On the flip side of that, there's very lazy players and there's very lazy officials too. And
Absolutely.
so, realistically speaking, I think it's a personality trait, but I do think that officials aren't, they definitely have the competitive drive that athletes do as well. Most of them were athletes.
Yeah, for sure. So your platform, you're working with this, you've been in it now, you said 3.5 years. What's your about it?
You put me on the hot seat. I didn't know this one was
I
coming.
did. I'm going off script.
My favorite thing about it is reading great journal entries. So we have a part of the app that gives you the journal, and officials have the ability after every workout to track what they do. Now, they don't always do that, and that's Okay, maybe you just read the workout, you know what you got to do. It says 3 sets of 8, it says 3 sets of 12. I'm running this far. You get in, you get out, you're busy. But I truly love reading the journal entries when an official has made strides and they say something, maybe it's a box jump and they say, I've never felt so explosive and jumped on a box this high. Our goal isn't for them to be able to dunk a basketball per se, but that's a good feeling. Like something in their training has paid off and they have a certain feeling surrounding that. Or, we don't write 1 rep maxes on our programs for obvious reasons. I want to keep them healthy and it's just more of a precautionary thing. I want to just stay in a safe range if I can. And I try to get them, hey, just be consistent. You're going to keep getting better. But, recently we had an official who, after his workout, he did a 1 rep max on a squat and he said, man, this is the strongest I've felt in so long. Those are truly inspiring because we know we're helping somebody. We know we're doing better things. It's the feedback from them. It's not necessarily the testimonials that we do like to share because it showcases that we're providing some value to people, but it's truly the feeling we get when you get something out of it and you get a positive result because you paid money to entrust in us with your health and your career. And knowing that we're giving back to you is a very, very important part of it.
That's super rewarding. Anytime you can kind of hear how you're making an impact on somebody and making them feel better than they were the day before, I think that that's really, it makes you feel good. It makes you know that what you're doing is the right thing and that it is valuable. Um, so couple of things just kind of specific to what you're doing. So first of all, are you working with officials at all levels? Is it youth on up through pro, or what's your population right now?
Yeah, there's a little bit of variance at every level. There is a couple of professional referees, officials, umpires, which we did not talk about. I skipped that one on accident, actually. You did ask me that question.
No, you're good.
Mostly college, mostly high school. We do have some that are, maybe in grassroots stages and stuff like that. But I'm not positive where everybody's from because, whenever you start training, I don't actually know. Do you live in Minnesota? Do you live in Florida? Now, some of that may come through conversation, and we do have a private group specifically for our officials where we do some, more value add stuff specifically for them and some technique talks and different things like that. So, in that aspect, I can learn about you, but not everybody I know where they're from and what level they may be at. But we do for sure have people in the professionals, the college, the high school levels. Absolutely.
So if somebody wanted to learn more about your platform, where do they go?
Our website is runninref.com. There is no G in that, runninref. Anywhere on social media, pretty easy to get in contact with. Instagram, LinkedIn now, Facebook. We're very, very active. We're easy to get in touch with. But that, or send me a personal email, austin@runninref.com. I'm more than happy to have a conversation or just help in any way I can. Just provide you value to make you a better official. That's what it's all about.
That's awesome. And I can attest to the fact that Austin is on top of social media posts. He's on top of answering emails. I know I've sent people his way, and I myself have reached out, and he's always right on it. So I appreciate that. You're definitely responsive. You get 5 stars in that category for sure.
Good.
Kind of last question as we wrap up. The From A to Zebra podcast has a mission every week to educate, elevate, and excite our listeners. What can you tell us about officiating specific to fitness that helps us to accomplish this mission?
I think that, as you mentioned earlier, this hasn't been a topic that's had a ton of traction to it yet. So I really think, oftentimes officials want to watch film and they want to learn about mechanics and signaling and, the laws of the game. I think that this topic is so rare still that it's going to be very exciting. Oh, this is something new. This is something different. How can I listen to this and maybe pick something up that's going to help me stay away from injuries or get in better shape for this upcoming season? So I think it's just a new topic or a hot topic that will provide something a little bit different and exciting. And I hope you get a ton of listens to it.
I hope so too. And I can't thank you enough for what you're doing. I mean, I know last year at the NASO Summit, you were doing a fitness class at like 6 o'clock in the morning. And the fact that people showed up was like exciting for me because that was something that hadn't been offered before. And I just think that shining a light on this and officials knowing that they have a place that they can go is just incredible. So as somebody who's worked with officials as long as I have, I just want to say thank you for what you're doing with Runnin Ref and to you and your team, because it's everything I've seen or heard about has been really, really positive. So keep up the great work. And I'm excited to see where it's come so far and really excited about where it's going in the future. So I'm looking forward to working with you more.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. And I can't wait to see you again in person this year at NASO. It's always good to connect and, be with you. And I wish the best of luck to this podcast.
Thank
It's a
you.
great podcast, the episodes that I have listened to. So anybody who's listening to this one right here, make sure that you subscribe to it because you're getting a lot of really good and different information. And the title, when I first heard what y'all called it, A to Zebra, I was like, that's something that's missing too in this world is creativity. So I truly love that. So
Thank
if you're
you.
not subscribed to this podcast, make sure that you do.
I mean, I think you can listen to it while you're working out. So we can combine. Look at that. I mean, you're helping both of us out.
That's right.
So Austin Ardrey, Runnin Ref, thank you so much for joining us on the From A to Zebra podcast. And thanks for the compliment on the title. I'll let my husband know because he's the one that came up with it. But we're loving what we're doing and we're glad that you're enjoying it just as much as we're enjoying seeing the growth of Runnin Ref. So thank you for what you do. And for our listeners, thank you for joining us on the From A to Zebra podcast. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and X for more information about the show. We'll see you next time.
Be sure to hit that like button, follow, subscribe, and also catch From A to Zebra on Instagram at from_A_2_zebra, Facebook From A to Zebra podcast, and on X at From A to Zebra.